UFC Vegas 84. We've got our next matchup. Ricky Simón taking on Mario Bautista. And this is a fascinating matchup. I got to say thank you again, though, for the dono, brother. That's huge. Very kind of you right before Christmas time. What a kind and thoughtful donation. I appreciate that. But back to this, right? Ricky Simón, Ricky, coming off that tough loss, right? Got brutally finished in his last fight. It was a really tough 5-rounder there. Went to the 5th round, and that 5th round, it was just too much. Song Yadong was getting the better of him for most of that fight. It felt like, certainly seemed like a ball rolling downhill, right? Ricky had some success in the early going, but just seemed like he was getting fought out of the fight, from, probably round 3 on. I have to go back and rewatch that fight, but I just don't have memory of Ricky Simón looking very competitive there. I felt like it looked pretty one-sided for Song Yadong after a certain point. And Ricky Simón, 8-3 record in the UFC. I mean, that's certainly nothing to sneeze at. Very talented guy. And the wins, Jack Shore, I think he was an underdog in that spot, went out there and delivered. Rafael Sunsao, I think he was heavily favored there, went out there and delivered. Big knockout, thunderous. Brian Boom Kelleher went out there, wrestled him to a decision, grinded it out, did what he had to do to get the win. Gaetano Pirelli got the submission in that spot, handled business accordingly. The Ray Borg split decision, I do think, is something to look at when you're looking at this fight, right? A guy that was able to use some hand speed, that was able to use some counter wrestling and some strength and some creativity to really make it a tough fight for him. You look at Ricky Simón's best wins. I mean, I'd have to say a Sunsao, who is past prime. Jack Shore, that was a great win. Hani Yaya, very solid win. Montel Jackson, very solid win, all the way back in 2018. Merab Dvalishvili, I mean, that's kind of a toss-up. A lot of people don't think he won that fight. To each their own. Anderson Dos Santos, kind of a journeyman guy, back in 2016, was able to submit Ricky. So Ricky's obviously come a long way since then, since he's been in the UFC. The pseudo win over Merab, like I said, the win over Montel Jackson, Hani Yaya, but then the knockout loss to Uriah Faber really set back his momentum, right? Then he goes out there, he loses a close one to Rob Font, but the takedowns weren't working. He wasn't able to get on top. He wasn't able to get his game going. And when I'm looking at a fight like this, I have to say, Mario Bautista is 30 years of age, right? He does not have the same amount of experience, but he's slightly younger here. He's the slightly smaller guy in terms of the reach, but he is going to have a height advantage in this spot. And I'm looking at a guy in Ricky Simón who I do worry just ever so slightly about the confidence coming into this fight. Coming off a stoppage loss, that's not the first time that has happened to him. Excuse me. You've got Mario Bautista, who's 7-2 in the UFC, and both of his losses are via stoppage. But he had the very unfortunate task of debuting against Corey Sandhagen, and he got submitted via armbar in the first round there. Brutal fight. Corey was beating him up, basically just mugged him, right? Beat him up on the feet, took that arm home with him. Brutal fight, bleeding, right? And then he got back on track, beat Jin Soo Sun, who I've been watching the UFC every weekend for as long as I can remember. I don't know who Jin Soo Sun is. I'd have to rewatch the fight. Much love and respect to him. I'm sure he's a great guy. But Miles Johns, I thought that was a very winnable fight for Bautista. Looking at Trevin Jones, that was a surprising one, right? I don't think many people expected that. And Trevin Jones has since been released from the promotion. You look at the Jay Perrin win. Doesn't age great, right? Jay Perrin no longer with the promotion. Brian Boom Kelleher submitted him in the first round. That's a great win. Although Brian didn't look his best in that fight. Benito Lopez, guy who'd been away for a while, not really a great win, honestly. I thought that was a layup. Thought that was an easy fight for him on paper. Guido Canetti, again, not really doing much for me, right? Guido Canetti, he's a guy where I'm looking at that saying, man, he's older, he's past prime, he's a kickboxer. What is this really telling me? That Mario Bautista is out here out grappling some guys that are favorable matchups. The thing that really put me over the edge is, man, Mario Bautista going out there and getting the win over Damon Blackshear. I've had a hard time rating Damon Blackshear, right? I just can't get a grasp for how good this guy actually is. But one thing I can tell you, 9-0 career to the submission. This guy, Damon Blackshear, he could put it together on the ground, right? He's got a twister, one of 3 in the history of the organization, right? So he clearly knows what he's doing on the mat. Mario Bautista was able to outvolume him and able to outwork him over the course of those 15 minutes, get the unanimous decision against a very tough guy, against a good fighter. I believe that was on short notice for Damon as well. 5-round fight, maybe Damon Blackshear takes that one, but unfortunately, that 3-rounder, Mario Bautista was able to get the job done. And in this spot, we got a 3-rounder, right? And we've seen Ricky Simone drop these 3-round decisions before. So here's what's interesting, right? I don't think Mario Bautista is a slouch in the wrestling, right? I think Ricky's going to be stronger. He's going to be a little more physical. I think he's got pretty decent tools in the boxing. But if he's not able to hurt Bautista, then I think that Bautista is a little bit faster. I think he's going to be able to move in and out on Ricky a little bit. I don't think he's going to get punked in the wrestling. I think he might be able to compete there. And I don't think he's going to get punked in the jiu-jitsu either. So it just seems to me like this could be a really competitive fight. This could be a fight where you're looking at a split decision type scenario. And, one guy is coming off a knockout loss. You're being asked to pay chalk. The other guy is coming off a string of nice wins, good performances. You're getting plus money by his name. For me, it feels like a dogger pass for that reason. But, I got to do the tape. Excuse me, do my due diligence and make sure that that all checks out. But that's just how I feel gut level. Ricky has more experience overall as a professional, but at the highest level, these guys both have a pretty similar level of experience. And Bautista seems to be putting it together on a good run and not really getting the respect of the betting public here.